Greetings, everyone. Greetings and salutations, and welcome again to another episode of the Supernormal Film Society. Today, we have another esteemed guest, Dr. Andreas Strohl, former and very esteemed director of the Munich International Film Festival. Welcome, Dr. Strohl.
Thank you.
I'm going to, of course, let you. I just gave the title. I'll let you maybe expand a bit further if you want to give our audience, our listeners, a little bit more in terms of your background, not only in film, because as some of you, the audience, might know, and as we both know, that your CV is quite extensive. Your profile is very extensive, and that's why we asked you to come through to this. To visit us in this podcast, in this episode. So maybe if you can expand a bit further in terms of your background.
I mean, with respect to film, I think that is quite a coincidental and therefore interesting story, because nobody in my family has ever watched movies or read a book or gone to a high school. So, but when I did go to high school, my best friend was the son of a film producer who had also um, rented a cinema in Munich. And so as a teenager, me and my friend, we could go to the cinema for free, to this one cinema. And that's where I saw a lot of movies. And that's also how I became acquainted with filmmakers, German filmmakers at the time, among them some very famous people like Werner Fassbinder, or Werner Herzog, or Herbert Achternbusch, Volker Schlöndorff. And then I didn't really think about studying film, because I didn't really want to become a filmmaker, and that the film studies was not something that I knew existed. So I studied literature and theater. And then when I was done with that, I thought I should apply for film school. And I had started making Super 8 short films, and but then I also applied for the Goethe Institute, and they accepted me. So I didn't I didn't follow up on film school, and but then after a few years at the Goethe Institute, they sent me to Prague in the early 90s, and that's where I did a lot of film screenings, retrospectives. I started a festival. So after that time, the I became the director of the film division at the head office of the Goethe Institute. And from there, I was scouted, I was headhunted, because the Munich Film Fest needed a new director. And so uh, the the Lord Mayor of Munich sent out some of his spies, and I was contacted, and I agreed to running. And then I was against, I had to write a 10-page new concept for the Munich Film Fest, and I was very surprised they actually decided for me, so I did that. And then again, I was sort of lured back into the Goethe Institute by the then Secretary General after 8 years. So after running the Munich Film Fest for 8 years and the International Festival of Film Schools, I then was in charge of the cultural work of the Goethe Institute, and I stopped focusing on film. Except that, of course, there were a lot of friendships that remained, and I was on film juries a lot, and film funds. They usually have juries too. So it has never totally left me, but I'm not really that much aware what has happened in film in the last 15 years since I quit doing that as a main profession.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I mean, that is quite a short time, 15 years in film, years. I still remember films that I've seen much longer, for a longer time than that, very vividly in my mind. So it speaks also to the persisting nature of film and images in our minds. They always seem fresh, and they have the stronger memories that they invoke. As I mentioned earlier before we started the recording this episode, I'm very excited today. I'm like a small kid in a candy store because also some of the people you have mentioned are some practitioners of the arts that I admire immensely. And it's really, really great to get a guest such as yourself, because you are able to give us some insights as well to not only just the people that make these films, but also their thinking and how you know how they view the form and just their personalities, because also that also can help us and also the audience understand better certain methodologies that they employ in whatever they do, whatever they create. I could be mistaken, but I do recall that at some point you did mention that you also did dabble a little bit, not only in film, but also as a maker, but also I think you're one of the most interesting people when it comes to new media as well. I think we won't go into details about that, but but it will lead to my next question, which is, how do you feel that new media, interdisciplinary work is sort of represented in film? Well, I know you did mention that you haven't seen anything the last 15 years, but uh, do you feel that even at the time that you were very actively involved in the sector, that it was well represented, and if so, how was it integrated into film, like more the new media artists and things like that?
You mean new media as a topic, as a content in film? Yeah,
Yes, as a
because
as a
I
content, and
think I think the
also
biggest yeah, I think the biggest impact on new media, and especially telephones that were equipped with a camera, is that um, is a formal influence. So it became acceptable at some point to actually shoot films that looked like they were shot with a smartphone. But film, more or less commercial film at least, always reacts to what goes on um, among their among the customers, the viewers of that film. So I remember there was a time when cell phones were becoming more and more accepted and frequent, but a lot of people thought that's a very snobby thing to have a cell phone. It's, it means showing off. So there were many scenes in movies where an actor threw away a cell phone, and then the audience would sort of laugh or
with
applaud or something.
applause, yeah.
Yeah, and it's
uh,
so that
Sort
that
of what
is
is
not.
happening with AI now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not unusual, but that has nothing to do with the media function of these shows. That's just a more social thing, defining a certain enemy because of envy or something else. But I think the impact of new media is probably mostly formal, and it sounds more negative than I mean it, but it has sped up editing. Attention spans have become shorter, and also multitasking has. There have been attempts to introduce multitasking in terms of reception into films. Uh, all of this, I don't know if that has led to any very fruitful attempt. But if you look, for instance, at the Dogma movement in Denmark, that happened exactly at that time when digital cameras and stuff like that became available, and it's a counter movement. So suddenly the rules were, no music that's not actually part of what is happening in front of the
Of
camera, no
yeah.
artificial lighting, no, and the idea behind it is a somewhat weird concept of authenticity. Nothing in film is authentic, but it still produced a lot of very, very good and interesting movies. So those are
Yeah.
sometimes the counter reaction is more interesting than the immediate influence.
Mm. I'm leaning. I know we are going to come to a section where I'm going to ask some of the films that you found very influential, or films that you sort of like a lot, or that you value. But I'm leaning a little bit of a little sort of a like or a sort of affinity to the Dogma movement and the collective. Is that correct? Or did you feel, because I know it was a very controversial move at the time, and such is great art. I mean, it is all art. The greatest art, of course, is very divisive. And what you are saying now is actually very also quite interesting, because I also, that's what von Trier and his team were going for, that authenticity. But when I was also viewing some of those films, it did feel that yes, there is that artifice of constructivism that's behind it. So you're trying to go for this authentic thing, but there's also this veil of it puts you in a very unusual position, yeah, in terms of feeling, because it's not really authentic, but they're going for it. But at the same time, there's these rules that they need to follow, which I find fascinating. That manifesto is one of my favorite
Yeah.
manifestos I've ever read. So I don't know, if am I correct sensing that you found them quite interesting in a good way, as in you have some affinity to some of them? And if so, which one was the one that you felt of the films that were created for that time that you felt, this is the closest to the principles of the Dogma movement?
But I think the most successful, most popular filmmaker within that movement was probably Lars von Trier, and I never really liked him all that much. I always thought there's a slight, I'm I'm not sure, almost. It sounds more drastic than I mean it, but I think there's a slight, almost fascist undertone there, and a very arrogant attitude. I like Thomas Winterberg's films a lot
Mm,
more. I
mm.
think he made some exceptional films, but films like Festen or Idiots, those are absolute
Yes,
masterpieces. But
idiots was
also,
idiots was
yeah, but also
yeah. The
in
first
the
one I'm not
wake of
familiar with, but yes. Oh,
in the
this is
wake of
really.
that,
I mean,
even a few years ago, maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, um, I forgot. I think it's also Thomas Winterberg with Mads Mikkelsen. This film about a few alcoholics who are teachers.
oh yes, yes, I know the film
This
you're talking about.
this is not really a
Yeah, yeah,
dogma film anymore, but I think it's a masterpiece, and it's extremely funny
yeah.
and sad
It is
at the
quite
same
fun.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is quite a fun one. I'm forgetting the title of this. This is what
I
I
think it's
hate about these sort of
another
things as
round
well.
or something in
Yes,
English.
yes, yeah, that was also a very good one. I did enjoy it immensely, I must say. So, I mean, yeah, I don't. I think I tend to agree with you there, Andreas, when you are talking about the arrogance of Lars. I mean, he has this punk slash rock star sort of personality. I mean, he does have the persona non grata T-shirt that he wore to Cannes. So there you go. It just goes to
But
show what type of
I have to
individual
say, I
he
have a
is.
very radical attitude to the distinction between an artist and his or her work. I really don't care what an artist does or thinks in outside the film. Even
Of
if
the
Lars von Trier was really a fascist, I'm only looking at the films, and but so I
mm,
see that
mm.
in the films. I don't care about the person, Lars von Trier.
Mm, mm. That is a good. It's also another great discussion we can have. In terms of the art and the artist, which people struggle with the distinction
Yeah.
from time to time. I myself go through that as well. So I know we are running out of time. Since I know you're a very busy man, so we'll try and go straight into. I would have really liked to get more anecdotes, because we've spoken about Terry Gilliam in the past, and your anecdotes with Werner Herzog and such. But of course, we don't have enough time to capture all that. Maybe in the near future, I'll invite you again to the episode, another episode, and then we can just expand on that, because I really feel there's so much interesting stuff going on there, and you have such amazing anecdotes and history around there. But we'll go to the second section, which will prove just as interesting as well to some people, and very controversial to most. Your best films currently? I know you did mention the last time when we spoke, and I was proposing we have this conversation that I mean they change from time to time, which is fair, which is totally fair. Because it's also a very unfair question. So that's a fair response to an unfair question. For someone who's seen as many films as yourself, you know. So we'll just start. I don't know if it will be out to you whether you wanna rank them in rank them from 5 to 1 or just, you know, put them randomly. I would go for the latter.
Okay, well, I sort of knew this was coming. So 5 minutes before we started doing this, I um, I thought about it because it's a bit unfair. Some things just come to your mind and others don't. So, but not only don't I believe in equating an artist with his work, I also don't believe in identity. So I'm a different person tomorrow and I have different favorites then. Or if you ask me in an hour, I will come up with other films. But when I thought about, and I wrote down a few titles here, but um, yeah, there's just too many. It's like if you asked me, what is your favorite Bob Dylan song? How am I
Yeah.
supposed to answer that? But yeah, there are a few that I really think are special. And the funny thing is that I don't really enjoy comedies so much. But when I think of my favorite films, a lot of them are comedies. But a comedy can either fail, which most do, or be excellent. There's nothing in between. And so there are a few excellent comedies. For instance, um, maybe I should try to do it chronologically, which is a
Yeah, I mean,
challenge.
it's
But
totally up to you, Andreas. Because I'm
Milos
also
Forman, Horji Mapanenko, The Fireman's Ball. That's from the Czech new wave of the 1960s. I think it's 67 or something. And it's before Forman was still at Farnborough at the film school in Prague. It's before he immigrated to the US. Before he did, I think the first film he did in the US was then a film about smoking weed. And later on, of course,
what's
One
the
Flew Over the
progression?
Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah, and that's an incredibly funny and sad film. And in the same
Yes.
vein, I would mention Jiří Menzel, also Czech filmmaker from the same year at the same film school, but an untypical one. It's called Vesničko má Střediskova, My Sweet Little Village. And that's 20 years younger. That's from 1985. And it's so incredibly Czech. I lived in Prague for 6 years, so that it's a comedy that would not work in a different context. There are comedies
Is
that
it?
you can transplant anywhere and they always work,
Mm,
but not in
mm.
that case. And so that's a very sort of sentimental relation I have to my time in Prague, probably.
So I
So
mean,
these
yeah.
two,
And so it's interesting that you should mention this. I've not seen both of those films, but I am trying to get into my Czech era of actually watching a lot of Czech films going back in time. And what I've noticed as well is that there was, and it's also inspired by this by Martin, this film critic, a Dutch film critic, who also mentioned a similar thing to what you're saying now, and this is what I find very interesting. Because also in my going back to the Czech, besides the fact that I love their artwork and the posters that they have for their films, especially in that era, 60s, 70s, the posters are just amazing. They they are actually have a very distinct humor, black humor, sometimes you could
exactly.
say. And this is the second time that I'm hearing someone else also mention it. And the fact that also when I'm starting to go in there, I'm starting with the comedies rather than they have quite a lot of war films as well. But I'm starting with the comedies because I feel they are more. But again, like you're saying, it's quite interesting that we come to this common conclusion around the comedy. I
Yeah,
haven't seen the
and
two, but I'm definitely going to put them on my list as well.
that is
And
very
then,
that's a Central European humor. I'm not a Catholic, but it's a very Catholic Central European humor. You find the same humor in Austria or in Bavaria, not in the north of Germany. That's a different sort of different culture. But so I could have mentioned some Austrian comedies just as well. But
Mm.
I would
Oh,
mention two
would
more. Yeah.
would that what meant explain? Oh, this is what's great about this sort of podcast. Also, I'm also learning as I'm doing. This is one of the things that I wanted to have start something like this as well, to pick up small own selfish reasons as well, to beef up my 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 film list and my to watch my watch list, but also to learn some new things as well. Um, could it be then why, like, when you're mentioning Austria, because you're saying it shares a little bit with that region, then it makes sense why some of the films come out the way they do, like from someone like, for example, Haneke, or someone like, he has that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Universal.
it now
Yes.
it's yeah now now it kind of makes sense a bit to me. I know it's not the same thing, you can't equate it, but I get now why that
Mhm.
link could happen. All right,
Yeah.
thank you for
Haneke
that.
is a little more artificial, artistic, but there are a lot of other. I mean, anything with Josef Harder in it,
Mm,
an Austrian actor, is has a very, very dominant black humor. So yes,
mm.
but
Okay. Oh, great.
I think you can find that in, for instance, in the work of the Coen brothers as well.
Mm,
The Big
mm, mm.
Lebowski is one of my favorite films,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is not
Of
very
course.
original. It's the favorite film of a lot of
You-
people. But also,
So you do abide. You do abide
I
to the
buy,
dude.
yeah, the dude about exactly.
Great.
And maybe the last one I would add to that list is Mars Attacks by Tim Burton. Almost the only Tim Burton movie I really like. I always find something wrong with them or over the top. But Mars Attacks basically summarizes everything you will need to know, or maybe don't even want to know, about movies on aliens and American domination. It's perfect. It summarizes that in a biting, hilarious way, and it's just incredibly fun. It's also from the 90s.
Mm. Interesting, because also for me, Tim Burton growing up, I mean, because I felt, that my idea of being edgy, well, I'm talking very early, like 14 years old, 16 years old, was actually to watch Tim Burton films, because they were like so much, in terms of horror, the whole thing. I was like, oh, I felt I was like the coolest, most edgiest person, until I grew up later and I saw for Andreas stuff and all this. I was like, okay. But it's interesting because I watched so much Tim Burton growing up. But Mars Attacks is something I've not. I mean, his filmography I've watched quite a lot, and it's quite interesting that you point me in this direction. So I'm definitely also gonna
It's
check that one out.
untypical for his work. It's not a
Yeah.
typical Tim Burton movie.
This is good. I think we are number three. Are we on number three or number four in terms
I
of
think
your
I
list?
mentioned 4 movies so far, but
4 movies already.
those were my comedies.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It says something about your personality, Andreas, because it's also a specific type of comedy. You see.
Yeah.
Mm.
But if I
And
move
then
on to
final big
to
one.
more serious movies, that is, of course, a lot more difficult because I don't think there are so many great comedies, but there are thousands of masterpieces. So I picked out 6, and I tried not to go back to silent movies. But my oldest one would be a John Huston
Why not?
film.
Why not, Andreas? If you don't mind me asking, why didn't you go all the way to the silent one?
Because I think that's so easily done. People
Mm,
put things on a pedestal when they're old and become part of a canon. So of course,
mm,
almost all the films by Murnau or Fritz Lang,
mm,
most of them are masterpieces. But
mm.
in a way, a little bit boring. We all know them. We all appreciate them. If I said Metropolis, yes, okay,
Of
everybody
course,
knows
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Metropolis.
yeah,
Um, so I don't.
yeah.
I'd rather look for something
Some
that's,
would even say with for Charlie Chaplin, everything is made as well. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, why would we say City Lights? Of course, everybody knows it's a
it's a bit of a
masterpiece.
it's a bit of a cheat. Yeah, I see what you mean.
But a masterpiece isn't necessarily my favorite film, and my favorite films are in many cases not masterpieces at all. So there was actually a festival for failed movies in Germany, but it didn't last long because the filmmakers felt insulted when they were invited. It's
That is actually
there's
quite
a
an
famous
interesting
story
idea.
about Wim Wenders not coming.
Oh, wow, that's really fascinating. That's really fascinating. Wow. I'm actually, I think that's actually a great idea. Maybe I wouldn't put the name failed in it because, but I would love to have it like that way. And I understood why they named it that way. And it makes the sense for me as well. But to
Yeah.
have filmmakers come, I'll try and, trick them into,
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
think of a
obviously,
name for it.
obviously, in Joburg, there's a feeling for that. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a center for the second best idea. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there must be
yeah,
an
yeah.
appreciation for stuff
There
that's
is
not. I mean, there's an
definitely,
irony that is shared in a way, a
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
an ironic distance, and that
Mm,
I like. That's probably the best thing about Joburg. This the kind of humor which is. I've only been here for a little more than 2 years, but it's something that I could immediately uh, relate to. Yeah.
mm,
But let me go to my films. So I would start with The Treasure of the Sierra Madre by John Huston. That is from 1948 with Humphrey Bogart, and it's after a German novel by Beethoven, who's who wrote a masterpiece um, about a ship with people on it that are basically sentenced to death because the ship is lost. And he's also written something that I'm reading right now about a young Indian guy somewhere in Mexico. I mean, American Indian who's Indio who drags carts with or across a mountain. Anyway, so that is a great film, and I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times, and I still like it.
mm,
But the film
mm,
I've probably seen the most often is Alexis Sorba's Sorba, the Greek.
mm, mm,
That's from the early 60s, after a novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, and but the director is Michael Kakoyannis, a Greek film with um, yeah, it's sort of a British half Greek outsider gets to this little island, and it's not a big island actually, uh, in the Mediterranean, and has to deal with uh, a society and culture that although he's half Greek, is not familiar with, and at the same time he sort of matures and becomes more gets in contact with his emotions and um, yeah, I think I saw that a lot when I was a teenager for very little money because it was a cinema in Munich that showed reruns all the time for just very, very little money. Um, yeah, and then I
That's
think,
that's also thank you, Andreas. I think also sorry to interrupt you there. I think that's also a great mark of a good film, a good metric as well. Because I also struggle as well with putting I struggled a lot with putting like my best films
yeah, yeah,
top five or so. And then I was, and I thought one day I was like, let me just distill this to the most basic metric, and that will be a film that resonates with me. Will be a film that is I just watch. I can just watch again and again and again. And I just started to think about films that I've watched many times unconsciously, and then I just realized, oh, actually, because we do have this tendency as humans as well to, sort of like attach certain prestige and emotions to certain pieces of art, and they might not be as impactful. I feel that is the strongest metric. If you can put a film in any time, and you just keep, and that for me is like the Spike Lee "Do the Right Thing" film, which I
yeah,
think I've watched it like 20 times already, and I'm not that good at watching films anymore because I fall asleep. I'm old. I get tired, I can't, but I can still watch that and I know every line, and I just don't know what it is about because in my life, I don't think it has impacted me, in a way of, there's this snobbish thing that we have as well. Like, oh, artistically, this is what we're looking for. I mean, it's got great elements, But the fact that I can always put it means it's touching me in a way that I don't quite comprehend, and that makes it my favorite. So in a way, one of my favorites. So
Yeah,
I think I agree with you. Mm,
the film seemed to change over time, but of course it's you who changes. So before I went to Prague, I already knew One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Milos Forman. But then he was one of our special guests at the Munich Film Fest at one point,
mm.
and I watched it again. And I actually watched it again a week ago, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So
And
in
you
other words,
completed it, right? You watched
I
through
watch
the
it
whole thing.
every 20 years or so.
It's
And
like what's going.
but I had this bizarre conversation with Forman. Then I said, um, I realized the whole film is a metaphor of what it's like to live in an illiberal country, because it's set in a lunatic asylum. But of course, that's a metaphor for a socialist country before '89. But there may be different things. So, for instance, Sorba the Greek, Alexis Sorbas, that I think a lot of it is due to the music of Mikis Theodorakis, but it's also Anthony Quinn. Anthony Quinn is the lead actor. Irene Papas is in the movie, but Anthony Quinn is so overwhelming. He's at the top of his presence on the screen, and there's so much power and lust of life in everything. It's also the role. It's not just the actor, but the two go together perfectly in that movie. And he's totally convincing as a Greek. I don't think he's got any Greek ancestry, but that
Mm.
doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And
very
then I
fascinating.
also grew up with a lot of Greeks around me in Munich. Munich is full of Greek restaurants. I had Greek fellow students at school and so on. So it's something
And you
that,
have quite a great grasp, command of the language as well. You surprised me the other day when you read what was written on my kimono there that had the Greek writing. I was like, oh, that's very
oh,
fascinating. Yeah, your
well,
commander.
that's just the Greek. Okay. My problem is that I do understand, to some extent, I do understand Bulgarian or Russian to a small
Russian as well.
extent,
Yes, yes.
but I have problems with their writing. The writing is also Cyrillic, but a different Cyrillic from Greek. So Greek I can read but don't understand, and the Slavic Cyrillic languages I cannot read but would understand. It's a catch-22. Anyway,
Well, add Isizulu to your list now, since you are also now
okay.
sort of exploring that. How many languages can one man learn? Clearly,
It depends on what
yes.
you define as learn. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm learning Zulu now, and I don't think I'll ever get as far as in Italian, which I never learned, but you just pick that up.
Mm,
It's
mm,
it's easy. Zulu isn't for me. Um,
right.
Let me continue. So
Yes, please.
there are films by Herbert Achternbusch, but outside Germany, almost nobody knows Herbert Achternbusch. He was a very close friend of mine, very close. For about 20 years, he was one of my three best friends. He died
Mm,
3 years ago. But it's
mm,
pointless to talk about him because nobody knows his films. I would rather speak of Werner Herzog, because Werner Herzog and Achternbusch, they did their first film together. Achternbusch wrote the screenplay, Herzog directed, and Josef Bierbichler was the lead actor. But there are two films that I would sort of merge into one by Werner Herzog. It's Aguirre, Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo. I think they're more or less the same film with different production budgets and slightly different stories, but they're all about the madness of one man and this,
and of
this
course they share
mission
the same
that
lead,
arrives them.
uh, Kinski.
Yeah. So
All right.
those are, I think, both absolute masterpieces. Uh, he cannot. I don't think there's anything you could do to improve them. When I was the director of the Munich Film Fest and I watched hundreds of films every year, um, I made this joke once, but journalists don't always get the joke. So I said, I will introduce a new section at the film fest, and it's going to be called the director's cut. And then they said, yeah, but that other festivals have that too. And I said, no, 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 I'm the director. I'm going to cut these films because they're all too long. And almost every film gets better if you cut off the last 5 minutes. Just let them end
Mm.
more abruptly and earlier. It's almost always good for the movie. And one of the very few exceptions is Werner Herzog. He always brings them to a point which distinguishes him enormously from Wim Wenders, who never finishes the narration visually. That's why at the end of Wim Wenders movies, you always have somebody who verbally brings the story to an end in a
To
long
an
monologue.
end. And
And
that's a cop out. Boom.
I hope he doesn't hear that because I really like him as a person. But yeah, that's something that is noticeable.
Yes. No, no, I totally agree with you. The last 5 minutes can make or break a film, or can even totally change the whole understanding of or what you've just said through the whole 90 minutes or an hour or 2 hours you've just said through. It's very interesting. And I kind of agree with you a lot as well in terms of the putting those two Werner works together, because I also kind of get the sense as well that they are very similar in tone and also themes and also just the execution. Totally agree with you in terms of the budget as well. But I differ a bit in terms of Andreas, and I shouldn't be offering my opinions. I hardly offer opinions on the guest films on this one, but might as well. Why not? We are here now. I would put uh I think it's gonna be so obvious. You're gonna laugh at me. I would put Fitzcarraldo a bit higher than Aguirre because oh my word, the scope is just it's mind-boggling. The scope
Mm.
for me to this day, I'm just like I think I've
Yeah.
also it's one of the films I've watched many a times, and also I like towards the end of Aguirre, the Right of is it Right of the Gods, right? Aguirre, that's the subtitle of the film.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it gets quite disgusting at the end. Not saying I've seen much worse films, but it gets to me. Me in a different way. I'm a huge, for horror, for splatter, whatever. I actually hate the term horror. I think Americans love that term a lot. But I'm just saying films that I have visceral violence and sort of, and the scene with the vermin at the end of that film it just gets it's so visceral to me. It's always
Mm.
elicited
Well,
a reaction to me. Yeah, so I would put
the
Fitzcarraldo
I
just
mean,
because of that ship going up the mountain is something else.
they are based on a very similar sort of experiment. You take Klaus Kinski, the lead actor, give him some obsession and put him on a river in South America.
Yeah,
That's what both films are about. So,
yeah,
um,
basically. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But
Wow, that's
then
really
at
great.
the same time, there were other films about rivers. There was Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford
Oh,
Coppola, same time.
amazing.
And it's
Oh,
also
it's around the same time, right?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
very,
also the
very
time
interesting.
of The Deer Hunter,
Yeah.
which is another one of my
Another
favorite
great one. Yes, yes.
the best film Michael Cimino ever made, unfortunately. But it's an absolute masterpiece. That film, last time I looked at it again, after probably having seen it for 10 times, was also like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm still under the
It's still
impression
very
of that. And
fresh in
every
your
time
mind.
you
Yeah.
watch it, you see some more hidden symbolism in it. It is so well thought through. Every little detail has a meaning in that movie. It's excellent. And roughly from the same time, totally different film. Um, Basically, I like all films Sam Peckinpah has ever made, but my favorite one is definitely Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And it's not because of the Bob Dylan soundtrack, although I'm a diehard Bob Dylan fan. It is, I think it is such an atavistic fable of how, the old ones kill the young, kill them before they grow, basically. And Chris Christopherson, as a, songwriter, singer-songwriter, is overwhelming as Billy the Kid. It's
Mm.
excellent.
He's actually
It's
one of my favorites as well. Just outside of that film, because I haven't seen that film, but just is his art. It's really something. I also do like Bob Dylan, but I don't think I like him as much as you, Andreas. It seems like he's
it's
popping up quite a
probably not
many times in
hardly
this.
possible.
I like. I don't know. I always equate Bob Dylan to this female also singer songwriter guitarist
John
from
Baez,
the same Johnny Mitchell. No, Johnny Mitchell.
John Mitchell. Ah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know, for some strange reason, I know they're totally unrelated, it's
Yeah,
totally different, but I find the writing and the poeticism around it, I always think when Johnny Mitchell's name comes up, in my mind, I just think of Bob Dylan. When Bob Dylan's name comes out, I always think Johnny Mitchell as well, and I love both their discographies, but I love Johnny Mitchell a bit more. I don't think she has as many great albums as Bob Dylan, though. I think there's only
no, of
2
course
Johnny
not.
Mitchell albums alive. But
I mean,
what
it would be
I'll go
this
yeah,
this conversation would be a lot harder if I had to. If you asked me to name my 20 favorite Bob Dylan songs, that would be a nightmare. I could probably name my 100 favorite Bob Dylan songs.
yeah, yeah.
And
But
if
this
I had
leads
to
to
name 10 of my favorite songs in the world, I would say 5 of them would be Bob Dylan songs. So it's
wow,
very difficult.
that is quite something. That's quite,
And
interesting.
we talked about the Big
But
Lebowski before. It's one of the reasons it's so great is that the man in me opens the film. One of the
mm,
great Bob Dylan
mm,
songs.
mm.
Underrated,
That is
of course,
that is
but
very
yeah.
true. That's quite true. But also this is leading to another question I wanted to have, to ask you. And that was, then what do you think there's been quite a few, films based on Bob Dylan, of course. And there's one I believe that was released last year. My memory again is coming very. I mean, as a host, I'm
Yeah,
not doing very well here.
it opened here at the
Yes,
Bioscope about a month ago.
yes,
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
yes. So, what are your thoughts?
Ah, I think it's good entertainment. The details are all more or less correct. The actors are good, and it focuses on just this crucial time. There were many crucial moments in Bob Dylan's life, but when he decided to say goodbye to the folk movement and play electric rock and roll, and it focuses on that very well. The actors are great. It would have been better if, I mean, everybody is so full of praise for the actors that actually sing the material, not only Bob Dylan's material, but also Joan Baez's and Woody Guthrie's and Pete Seeger's. I would have preferred to have the original music there, although you can hardly tell the difference sometimes. But it's really, I think it shouldn't be overrated. And the fact that the lead actor is able to imitate Bob Dylan as a singer is totally irrelevant. But the film is good because it's a truthful portrayal of a crucial phase in the life and career of Bob Dylan, and it's
And
entertaining.
a crucial phase in the fans as well, because there was quite a lot of division. It was very divisive, him moving from folk into using,
Yeah.
electronics and all these pedals,
And
and people were very
everybody is easily identifiable, even if they had to change a name. Susie Rotolo, Bob Dylan's girlfriend at the time, she got a different name in the movie, probably for privacy and reasons. But you
mm,
always know exactly who is who, and you
who
always
it
know what's
was,
going to
yeah.
happen next. But it's still fun to watch it.
So I'm glad that you find it, quite, good. I avoided it because, especially I avoid all biographies for musicians. I just feel they always tend to, I formed this thing about musicians in my mind. I know I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic. They almost occupy this mystical, area which no one can ever really address, and I feel like, the best way to represent them is how they represented themselves in their music, and the music can take you anywhere. But I mean, films do try and do a decent job, but I've been disappointed in so many films. I just gave it up at some point. I'm so scared. I want to watch it because a lot of people as well were recommending it to me, and also another guest, Gwanele Sosibo. I think I had him on episode 2 of this very podcast, and he was also like, "Please watch it." I didn't have high praise for it, but he was. I think he's very critical, such as like yourself, Andreas. But he was like, just give it a shot. So this is sounds like something I need to check out. So I will definitely have a look at that. So
Yeah.
Andreas, I don't know, is there any other film that you might have before we wrap up
Yeah,
on this? And
there's
or
one last because
okay,
I
you
talked
did
about
cheat a little
Herbert.
bit, Andreas, but it's fine. You are very smart, so you got the better of me on that one in terms of your listing.
I'll just very briefly, Aki Kaurismäki is, uh, in my eyes, the uh, one of the most interesting filmmakers alive. And we've been friends for several years, and spent a lot of time talking, and now I lost contact with him. But if I had to point out one movie, I would say Drifting Clouds. Actually, I when I started making short documentary films, I um, I called my little company the Drifting Film Production, but it's also a kudo to Hank Williams and the Drifting Cowboys Band. So it's all connected. But Drifting Clouds is a fairy tale with a lot of biting social poignancy. It's Kaurismäki is unique, and I would recommend any of his films, but Drifting Clouds more than any
I
other
think
one,
Klaus
maybe.
is the one. All right. Great. Um, Back to before we wrap up, Andreas, I'd like to go back to your career as well as a filmmaker, which is, a very interesting one. Um, I would say, I mean, even by filmmaker or film practitioner or people who work in the industry standards, it is quite, unorthodox, in a good way. So, in terms of making films, are you still interested in this, Andreas? Do you see yourself making something, one last hurrah or something like that, going back
No,
to
I sort
work?
of gave up on that. The only real films I made were short documentaries about Herbert Achterbusch and Aki Kaurismäki, because they were friends and because nobody else seemed to be interested. And then I had a project, a slightly more ambitious film, also in a way about Achterbusch and his house in a forest in Austria, and an excellent cinematographer who was willing to do it. But I gave that up because I then became the head of the Munich Film Fest, and I thought that is not really, nobody's going to treat that film in a neutral way. It's not really compliant. They're going to invite this film everywhere because the Munich Film Fest is a
Yeah,
large festival, has some impact. So I stopped doing that, and I sort of wiggled my way through with these short documentaries that I made. I did everything on my own: the camera, the sound, the editing, and I can't do that anymore. I would have to take, if I made a
time.
film, if I wanted to make a film now. First of all, producing a film in Germany is a nightmare. It's You spend years and years preparing that, and then I would have to take off a long time. Well, I'll retire soon, so who knows? But um, yeah, no, that's
This is
too
why I
much
also
work,
asked
and
that
I'm not
question
expert in
because,
anything, so I can't really do
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Andreas. This is also why I did ask that question, because I do know that you might have a little bit of some free time depending on what you want to explore. Maybe you might want to just maybe have another gander at filmmaking, which would be really fascinating considering your experiences and your opinions around the form. So yeah, but oh well. Alas, I see we hear that you are not something that you are not even considering, but I do know as well that you are active in information science and information technology and things like that, and and maybe that could be something that also we might look forward to you exploring, maybe another book perhaps or something like that. I just want
It's
to
more
give
likely,
something
yeah.
to the audience, yeah, some of the work that you are currently doing. So, is there anything else besides the book that you already have out that you are currently that's going to be officially maybe published or something like that?
There was a time when I wrote down things that happened to me basically on a daily basis, and it's getting less and less because when you live in a different culture, in a new culture, you get used to it, and after a while, everything becomes habit, and then it's no more interesting. So then you actually have to use your imagination, which is not my way of um, of working. So I wrote down like 50 short, basically phenomenological stories, observations, and but I'm not sure they're gonna make a book, and if so, more likely in either Germany or in the US than here, because it's not so interesting for South Africans, but it's very interesting to me.
Andreas, come on, you are speaking to a South African right now who's inquiring about clearly. Uh, Gee, there are some South Africans that are interested in it. So, and also for the rest of the audience, because of course our podcasts are international. When Dr. Strohl was mentioning earlier here, he means South Africa. So he's currently in South Africa
Yes.
and he's been here
Sorry.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, because we always have to give context. Yeah, surprisingly, this podcast is also viewed by a lot of people outside of South Africa. So that also, I think I'm in the same boat as you, Andreas, in, in terms of of having South Africans interested in what you are trying to have a conversation you're trying to have here. So I thank you so much for your time. I find fascinating. I usually actually delve a bit deeper per film in terms of certain things and what certain things and why those films are poignant to the guests, specifically to you, Andreas. But we didn't have that much time today. But hopefully next time, if we do get it next time, and if you are still in South Africa, maybe in a year or so, whenever that could be, you could come in and then share more the anecdotes of behind the scenes of running a film festival. Because when I was thrown into that world as well of working at the Durban International Film Festival, I had never attended a film festival before. This is also another crazy story that most people don't know. And then here I was now responsible for getting films on screen, and I had never myself attended because of just how Africa as well is set up, and didn't have access to these sort of things while growing up. And even in my community where I'm from, I mean, you didn't have film festivals that were taking place. You had to go to the cities, and even in the cities, it was reserved for you know. But it was quite a turbulent world. I was there for a few years, 5 years. So it'd be really interesting. Maybe when in another episode we share those ups and downs and those really really out there
And
stories that happen.
in another episode, I'll interview you. I'll interview you about your experience.
Yes. Yes, it was, trust me, it was very adventurous, more scary than than happy memories around that time. Filmmakers are a breed of their own, I must say. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, and any last words before we wrap up, and then we just say goodbye to everyone.
Thank you for the invitation. We're gonna continue this over lunches, probably.
Definitely, definitely. And I want you to join me in running. Possibly you can come running and we can chat while we are running, Andreas. All right. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, Andreas. And
It will.
goodbye to everyone.